Hello, welcome back to DCS Debrief at the Air Warfare Group. A little bit of an experiment in this video. I've been messing about putting media into TAC view, and I wanted to see how well it synchronized and how useful it would be for debriefing, and it's actually very, very good. So I've got a video here that I've created that I've captured from a track from a BFM engagement which I flew on Friday, and that was part of the Tactical DCS Discord group's Friday night fight, which is a very informal get-together for a bit of one-on-one BFM for a bit of a laugh on a Friday. And it's the first time that I've done one of these in a very, very long time, and that will show. I lost, and it's a good debrief actually for a couple of different points, but it serves as a vehicle really to show what TACView is capable of. But before I go on, I would recommend anybody wants to really learn about BFM, go across to Tactical DCS Discord. If you're not confident in BFM, or even if you are, maybe get a couple of mentoring sessions, jump in on a Friday night fight, because it's like the lowest barrier to entry for multiplayer sort of semi-competitive BFM. It's a real sort of club atmosphere, but still certainly I felt apprehensive prior to this engagement. It turns out for good reason, because I got pretty badly beaten. But yeah, it's great for a if you're after just a fraction of what the adrenaline must feel like going into something like this for real. Go and sign up for a Friday night fight, because you do get that adrenaline rush, and it does change the decisions you make. Knowing that if you lose, you'll be out of the ladder completely. If you're at all competitive, anyway. I'm not the most competitive person in the world, but I'm still a human being, you know. So, and I didn't want to lose, but I did. So there you go. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? The video on the right shows the external view from the track file. Picture in picture on that is going to be my cockpit view. It's not especially clear, but hopefully it'll be clear enough. And then on the left, obviously, you've got TAC view. And I'm just going to step through this engagement. So you can see initial setup then. Let's just get the altitude poles on here and see. We were about 6,000 feet to start. I can actually add that in altitude. Yeah, 6,500 feet. So I was flying against this guy in his Mirage 2000. I've been beaten by the Mirage 2000 before, flying the Hornet, and so I kind of have a good idea of the strengths and weaknesses of this aircraft now. It's extremely competent in high alpha nose position type environments, and not especially good energy fighter, although it does have a big enough engine. It accelerates quite well, but it does bleed energy. That big delta wing, you get increments of the increments of form drag build very, very quickly as the angle of attack comes on, and slow it right down. And you can play that to your advantage if you're in a dissimilar type. I tried to play it to my advantage, but ultimately, well, you'll see what happens. So anyway, here's me in my Hornet. There's the guy I was fighting in his Mirage. And my game plan going into this was to get to circle as quickly as possible and try to bleed this guy down into a rape fight. My experience, limited though it is in flying against human opponents online, is that most are poor energy fighters. They're poor at energy conservation in a descending two-circle fight. They either get greedy or they get bored, I guess, or intimidated by being across the circle, and they're get their overall the overall impression that I get is that most people's succumb to the temptation to pull the nose round and end up bleeding energy. So that in a fighter that's going to bleed energy as much as the Mirage does, that was my game plan, was to get this guy to bleed. Now I got off to a bad start. So first of all, a word about my rig. I'm flying in a Oculus Quest 2 VR headset. I'm not especially in love with it because the tracking seems a bit janky to me. It's not actually as smooth the tracking as my old CV1, and it's certainly not as smooth as the Valve Index that I've also flown a little bit in. Excuse me, I'm having a cup of tea. Be that as it may, I got off to a bad start because I actually spotted to my right as I came up to the merge a parachute from a previous match, and that distracted me, and I ended up initially thinking that that was the Mirage, that he just dived for the deck and was well below me to the right, and of course it wasn't. So then I was blind, or rather no joy from the get-go, and you'll see that you'll see what happens. Let's take a look. So he's coming in positioning for a just get rid of these labels a little bit, we don't need those just now. He's positioning with very little turning room. Actually, he could have taken quite a lot more turning room if he'd have wanted to. I am under the impression that he's down here somewhere, so I put the lift vector on the parachute, get my eyes on it, focus on it, and realise it's a parachute, and then by that point we've blown through the merge. He's gone vertically upwards. I've reversed because I've realised it's a parachute. Now I'm looking back over my left shoulder to try and pick the Mirage up. Can't see him, so I decide I've got a good amount of speed. I think I came into the merge about 450 knots with a plan to pitch back, and yeah, nearly 500 knots calibrated airspeed there. So he's got the energy advantage on me already, and I pitch up blind. Pure vertical to try and pick him up visually, and my thinking here was, if he's going straight up, I've got a good chance that I can end up above him. I can zoom this aircraft better than he's going to be able to, because he's going to bleed and I'm going to end up above him at the apex. I didn't actually think that he'd gone vertical. I figured he wouldn't have gone for that. I didn't think he'd have gone straight down, because that would be a pretty bold move from 500 odd knots to commit vertically nose down towards the sea. And I figured he'd probably done what most DCS players seem to do, which is go horizontal at the merge. In actual fact, he'd gone vertically straight up, but I picked him up quite quickly. I thought he might have tried to force a one circle fight, and in actual fact he has got a one circle fight, but it's more because of my sort of being crap than his game plan. I think he's slightly oblique at this point. I'm going straight up, and my game plan here, now that I've got him tally, is to get a good zoom on, roll out on top, get that exclusive use vertical turning room, and use the a nose down maneuver then to grab some angles back. I figured I would be probably at a slight disadvantage over the top. I can see his nose here, so I know that I've lost some angles, but I'm fairly sure I can win those back with that exclusive use turning room at the top. Anyway, I pulled a little bit too hard here and ended up having to go nose to nose with him. What I didn't want to do here was zoom and give him an easy over the top gunshot, because I know that Mirage is capable of moving the nose even when it's at a very low energy state. So a slight change of plan here. Now I realise that I'm in his forward quarter. I've got nothing like a snapshot opportunity, and I don't know whether you can see on the right screen, you probably can't quite make him out, but his nose looked pretty threatening at this point. So I do a bit of a nose down jink here to try to spoil any gunshot that he's got. I know he's got very limited ammo in that aircraft, so he's probably not going to take a very, very speculative high aspect shot, but I definitely want to try and spoil that in case he does. And now I'm thinking, okay, I've lost the angles, but we're going to be pretty neutral. If I can get us neutral over the top, then I'll have at least won back what I lost through being distracted at the merge. So there's that little bunted bunt and then jink, and you can see now we are pretty much neutral as we go canopy to canopy over the top here. The energy states here are pretty similar, and now I'm thinking, right, I'm canopy to canopy. I can force a 2 circle out of this. I can get back on the wagon and we can sort this out. Let's see what actually happened. So I'm looking back at him, I see him barrel roll around and commit nose down 1 circle, and I'm actually thinking at this point, okay, well that's not the worst situation in the world to be in a Hornet, but I've got a decision to make here, because I know he can bleed quicker than I can. I know he's going to be able to reduce that turn radius quicker than I can, but he's going nose down. He's going to be going at a hell of a rate, and I'm actually not that quick. However, I'm too quick to be able to effectively bleed that energy off. The Hornet, those of you that have flown the Hornet will know that particularly with nothing on it, and I'm not used to flying a Hornet that's completely clean like this. I'm used to flying with at least a centerline tank and either pods or missiles on the wingtips at the very least. I was shocked actually at how fast this thing accelerates with nothing on it, and that bit me, and I'll talk about that later. But I'm nose down. Those of you who fly the Hornet will know that with any sort of nose down attitude above about 370 knots, you're going to have a hard time. You can't get enough drag on the aircraft at max reheat to stop accelerating. The aircraft isn't, you haven't got the load factor to generate that drag. So I kind of committed to a horizontal fight now. So I'm a little bit behind this fight. And he's nose down, so he's in a better position, but I figure if I get horizontal, then the best he's going to be able to manage is low across the circle, and I might still be able to force it 2 circle, and if I can get him to point at me, then I might be able to get him to overshoot. Let's have a look. So he's coming nose low across the circle, just like I thought. I'm generating I'm actually doing better on angles than I thought I might here, and we get another fairly neutral merge here, although I'm not that optimistic to call it a neutral merge. He's got turning room below that I can't use, but I'm sort of getting back to where I want to be, and I'm determined now to keep this flat. I'm fairly confident that he is now going to go up and over the top, and I think that is in fact what he did. Let's take these trails down just a tad there so that we're not confusing ourselves. And I'm just going to keep going around in the horizontal, keeping my lift vector on him as best I can, but I don't want to pull up and play his game nose to tail, because I'm not in a position to do that. If I pull up here, then he's just going to roll and put his lift vector on me and be able to turn around the corner a lot quicker than I can, and he's just going to end up in my control zone. That was my feeling at the time anyway. Please leave a comment below if you can see another resolution from this situation, but I felt at this point like I was kind of trapped in the horizontal and pretty much running out of ideas, with not an awful lot left in the bag of talent either. So anyway, let's carry on. We're only just over a minute into this fight. Okay, so he comes down the other side of the circle, and I'm thinking, right, okay, I can get either an overshoot, or at the very least I can get him to bleed here, and I can get nose to tail, and I'm in my comfort zone here. I'm in a defensive spiral. Okay, looking to the right here then. From my point of view, I'm looking across the circle at his planform. I can control this now, and yes, I'm slightly defensive because I'm looking at his I'm looking at more nose than I am tail, but I'm very much I'm not, the Hornet doesn't, as those of you who fly it will know, it doesn't exactly own the energy fight, but against a Mirage it can put a fairly competent performance in, and you can see here that he's bled down to 200 knots. I'm at 280, and I've got a pretty decent energy package here despite being below him. So I'm committed now to this vertical spiral. I'm hoping that I can press this all the way down to the deck, get a good deck transition, and then roll out behind him. So down we go. And as I see more nose, let me just stop it here and put these labels back on. As I see more nose, I'm pulling to control that, to stop him bringing his nose on. So I've got the energy to spend. He hasn't got any to spend really. So he brings his nose on here. I'm seeing more nose. And now you'll see me increase that pull and bleed my speed down to control that. You can see the speed coming down there, coming down, coming down. And then as the nose comes off again, now the circles they're not quite misaligned. Well, they are sort of misaligned there, aren't they? But he's more or less inside my circle. And so while his nose is off, I'm going to use that to bleed energy. And I don't really want him too far above the horizon, because at the deck I don't want to give him too much turning room, because I know that Mirage can roll over and split S through and bleed energy off as it does so, and then threaten me. However, I also know that I'm going to have a lot more speed at the deck than he does, so at the very least I'm going to be able to extend and get away from his gun envelope. He's got no missiles, so he can't threaten me. Extend out of the fight and then pitch back in to circle and go again effectively in albeit defensive, but in Hornet land rather than in Mirage land in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Now clearly that's not my primary option. I want to get offensive if I can by driving around the circle, but that's my get out of jail free card, or so I thought. So down we go. Then you can see I'm gradually building my energy as I can see plan form, and he's doing a pretty good job for a Mirage guy to keep this thing under control. I can see all that stuff coming off the top of his fuselage, so I know he's at low energy state. Yeah, I'm bleeding down here because I can see more nose, and I'm trying to get round opposite that circle, and you can see from the top now he's well inside my circle, and I'm just going round the outside, and I know I've got the rate advantage here. I can see all that vapor coming off the top of his jet. I know I'm increasing through 300 knots and I'm into that rate, and I'm now driving around the circle. He's recognized it as well. Look, he's unloaded there. I see the vapor disappear, so I know that he's unloading for knots now, and I think, right, the horns come out. I'm like, right, I can kill this guy. I'm now in an offensive position. I'm doing an offensive brake turn into the Bandit 6 o'clock. What I should have done here is start button pressing on my stick that I'm not really 100% familiar with, to get the guns and the radar and everything else up. I get myself into all sorts of trouble here, and you'll see what happens. So there he goes. He unloads. He's coming up through 200 knots. He then sort of waffles about a bit there and kind of half does, half doesn't extend, although he's limited in how much he can unload because he's quite close to the sea. And I'm now trying to control this so that I'm going to roll out with a good solution. Completely unprepared for how quickly the Hornet accelerates when it's completely clean and light at maximum burner. So 350 knots already. Look how aligned the fuselages are. This should have been a big hint to me. Okay, you're going to align fuselages. You need to fly two-handed BFM now. That throttle, rather than just leaving it parked, I should be controlling overtake with my throttle now instead of lead, lag and pure, because I'm going to have to put the nose on this guy if I want the gun rounds to hit him. So here we go. I'm already overtaking him now. He's gone nose up. I'm incredibly fast. Well, I'm not incredibly fast, but I'm fast for a Hornet here. And he's pulled up, and I don't know whether this was intentional or not. I hope it was intentional, because it's an absolutely brilliant bit of situational awareness on his part if it was. Pulls up straight into the sun. So up he goes. I'm kind of cutting the corner. I'm trying to take lead now. I lose him in the sun. I've just about figured out the switchology for the guns. Where I would have been shooting him, I just can't see anything. Absolutely fantastic. I hope that was intentional on his part. And now, look how aligned those fuselages are. I've got 466 knots. He's got 349, 350. I've got over 100 knots of overtake, and I'm only a mile I'm not even that, I'm half a mile tops. You know, I really ought to be thinking about controlling my overshoot here, getting up into the vertical. I'm not thinking about any of that, I'm thinking about killing him. And here's what happens. So he then breaks back down into me at the point that I take my gunshot. Okay, and absolutely brilliant one circle redefinition. I've just done a video on redefinitions on the BFM series. Go and have a look at that. But this guy flies a blinding one circle nose down redefinition. Realises really quick. I mean, look at that overshoot. What a horrendous overshoot there from me. 488 knots through him doing 269. And I've also, I should say at this point, completely lost track of where the sea is. I've target fixated, completely target fixated. And now I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, control this overshoot. Can't control the overshoot because I'm nose down now at 488 knots in a Hornet. This is only going to end one way. He reverses, quite right. So there I am flying through his 3 to 9 line. He's trying to get his gun pipper on me. I think he probably got a bit target fixated at this point as well. And now, I mean, I think Betty starts screaming at me in a second, roll left, too late, because I'm going in the sea at this point. And down we go. He then tries to get his gun pipper on me, gives me a squirt but doesn't make it. I fly into the sea and then he flies into the sea. And that was the end of that. A very ignominious end to my sort of first BFM adventure for a while. So what lessons can we pull out of that? Well, if I can resync this, there we go, that's better. Okay. I'll have to blur that bit out because I had people's names on. Anyway. Yeah, let's go through the high points then. What could I have done differently? I could have got tally with him, start off with. I mean, I've got a TD box around him. Should have been a giveaway. Instead I was staring at a parachute. Distraction. At the merge, I should have probably done something more inventive than plan for a pitchback. But anyway, went into the vertical. Probably got the best out of that I could have done given the situation. Leave a comment below if you think I really badly screwed it up. One circle downhill. I probably won that from the angles point of view, but I can't use this turning room because I'm going too fast, and so I have to commit to the horizontal. I think the big takeaway so far for me is, you know, when you're fighting a light, clean Hornet, keep it in the speed range it's happy in. You know, especially if you're planning on rating someone in the Hornet, do not let the speed get too high, because you just end up unable to maneuver and constrained, over constrained. This vertical, this defensive spiral here, rate fight, I was happy with that. I think I performed about the best that I'm capable of performing in that regime all the way down. But here, my number one thing, you know, tenets of BFM, go back, watch the series, like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff that I'm supposed to say, even though I don't really care because I'm not monetizing the channel. But anyway, here I should have been thinking deck transition, make use of any turning room, and here I should have been thinking two-handed BFM, and I should have controlled that overshoot, and it's all over bar the shouting here as I pull to point at him. You know, as he breaks left, I should have been breaking right going up, you know, and leaving him downstairs, and taking all that energy that I've got to separate and reset. Even if it means resetting into neutral, at least I'm going to have a decent energy package as I come back into the fight. You know, awareness of the surface would have prevented me from, I never would have got to this ridiculous nose down commit at 400, nearly 500 knots in a Hornet, which I obviously couldn't win because the sea has a PK of 1. Anyway, that's it. That's the debrief. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed being in this little experiment with the media and the TAC view. I'm constantly amazed at what TAC view is able to, you know, and all these other tools that we have like Lot ATC and SRS and all this community generated capability in DCS and in the flight sim community. I'm not a newcomer to flight sims, but I'm newish back in the game. You know, I'm a casual simmer really, and I'm just astounded by the level of capability. It's far better than anything that I experienced in really in my professional life. Certainly for the cost, it's staggering. Absolutely tremendous capability. And if you're a youngster and you're just getting into flight sims now, my goodness me, you don't know how lucky you are. Anyway, top job to everybody involved in creating DCS TacView and SRS and Lot A-18C and all those other tools that I use. Thank you very much. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you back in the next video when I get one out. Cheers.